All right. So, hello everyone. This is Quanzel Wyatt, the host of the Tell Your Story podcast. Today with how do you pronounce your name? I'm so sorry.
No worries. It's Nenia Corcoran.
All right, Nina Corcoran. Yeah,
Mhm.
Corcoran. And she is today's guest today. This is a recorded podcast, not a live podcast. Just to help make things a little bit easier, and also know too, a lot of people can't like see these episodes too during the afternoons and stuff. So this is just will be easier for everyone, including me and myself too. And being able to again get this out to as many people as possible within like their own schedules and stuff. So with that said, introduce yourself to the world and the podcast and to the podcasting viewers and listeners.
All right. Well, hi everyone. My name is Nenia Corcoran. I am the author of He Loves Me Not, which is a young adult fiction novel aiming to shed a light on toxic relationships and teen dating violence. I have been a police officer for about a decade, and I am also a survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault. So I am aiming to speak out and let people know what's going on behind the closed doors.
Awesome. And where can people find your book?
You can pretty much find my book anywhere that books are sold online. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target has it as well. So
Awesome.
yeah, anywhere.
Yeah, so guys, check out her book when you get the chance. As she said, it's available anywhere that sells books, including Target. So believe it or not, so if you still go out to Target for books, go out to Target. With that said, let's get on to it. We talked a little bit before, and you mentioned being a former police officer for 10 years. So explain to the viewers and listeners of your experience, especially as a victim of domestic violence, and how that like changed how that role sort of changed and how you sort of like see things, especially you want to speak out and sharing your story with everyone to help others be able to share their story too.
Yeah, absolutely. So um, becoming a police officer was what I knew I always wanted to do. Even though I technically went to school for English because that was my passion, I knew that when I got out of school, I was going to go into law enforcement. It kind of like ran in my family. So, um, I headed out after graduating, and I became a police officer in a small town in New Hampshire. And I absolutely loved what I did, but I was one of a very few female officers in the area, and I was the only one in my department. And so I felt a tremendous amount of pressure to just be this badass because I wanted my male counterparts to see me as an equal. So I
Mm-hmm.
always felt like I was working so much harder to be accepted than everybody else around me. I was constantly putting on like this extra brave face in whatever situation because I never wanted anyone to look at me and say, you can't do this because you're a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So about 3 years into my police career, I responded to a call for domestic violence. And I would have considered myself a domestic violence expert. As the female officer in my department, those were the calls that I was sent to. I could
Mm-hmm.
relate to the female victims because they felt comfortable talking to me. I just always ended up at those kind of situations.
Mm-hmm.
That was just kind of my role. And so here I am talking to this woman, and I can just tell that, what I'm saying is not getting through to her. And she is making all the excuses and saying all the things that you would expect. And it was just so frustrating to me. I was getting so frustrated because I wanted to help this woman and she was making it impossible for me. And so finally, I had to leave, and I was angry about that too because I knew my hands as a law enforcement officer were tied. There's only so much I can do
Mm-hmm.
without the victim's cooperation. And so I was frustrated and angry, and I get back in my cruiser and I go to type up my notes, which is pretty standard after you leave a call. And I'm typing, and I realized out of the blue that everything I was typing, all of my notes, I could have put my own name in front of it and it would have been 100% still relevant. It was 100% true.
Mm,
And that was a terrifying moment because I had met the man that I married when I was just 11 years old. We were the same age at the time. We grew up together.
mhm,
And so this was a 15-year relationship that all of a sudden I was viewing through this light of realizing that it was toxic and it was dangerous. And I couldn't believe that I missed it. And I was absolutely completely embarrassed and ashamed to say that not only had I missed these signs, but here
mhm,
I was, a police officer supposed to be this total badass and able to take care of other people and protect my fellow officers on the street and take care of everybody else's problems. And here I was missing the biggest problem in my own life and putting
mhm,
myself in danger. So it was traumatizing to realize, and it was also really embarrassing, and it made it really hard to deal with because I was so embarrassed of having my coworkers and stuff find out, because I thought they would judge me and I thought that they would think less of me because of
mhm,
that victim label. I was terrified of having that label attached to me.
mm. So, wow, wow. So with with that said, what was the process then for you after that? Did you immediately go see someone, then, or talk to someone, or what was that process like after you made that those initial like self awareness of like everything that you mentioned?
So after I made my initial kind of realization, I went home and I looked for signs that I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I looked for anything that I could hold on to say I'm overreacting, or I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I can't, obviously this is not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went home, and for several days that's what I looked for. And instead of finding good signs to hang my hat on, I was
Mm-hmm.
finding the opposite. I was realizing that things were even worse off than I thought. And I felt really alone because I felt like I didn't have anyone to reach out to because I was afraid. I mean, all my best friends were police officers, and I was
Mm-hmm.
afraid that if I told any of them that my whole career, everything I had worked for, would crash down around me because now I was a victim, not a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Now I was weak and where I was supposed to be strong, that kind of thing. And so it took several days of really gut wrenching kind of depression to finally reach out to my very best friend, who is also a police officer and a male, and
Mm-hmm.
say, I have a problem and I don't know what to do. And I was really prepared for him to basically turn around and be like, you're not the person I thought you were, so we're done here. But to my amazement and to his credit, that's not how he responded at all, and he was the picture perfect support system, and turned right around and was like, okay, let's figure out a safe plan, let's figure
Mm-hmm.
out what you need to do, like let's make this work.
That's awesome.
And that's exactly what I needed. But I was lucky because he was a trained police officer that's trained in domestic violence. Not everyone has that as their
Mm-hmm.
support system. So I know from talking to my own family later on that if I had reached out to one of them, I think it would have been really different because they wouldn't have known how to respond or what to
Mm-hmm.
say. And that's the struggle that so many other victims have, is that they feel alone and they have no one to reach out to because their best friends are not trained police officers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With that said, what do you think is best for people who are not as trained with domestic violence dispute as a trained police officer, and sort of like tips of anything, whether it's reaching out to police officers, to like a caseworker, or just sending or just saying like, hey, like we can just set up a plan for you to just stay over at my place, for like for the time being till we figure things out. Like what could be the best way for them until like a professional can come in and help like with the situation.
So the first thing that I would say is the most crucial thing that a friend can do in that situation when someone reaches out to you in that moment of desperation is to be completely non-judgmental.
Hmm.
The last thing that that person needs to hear in that moment is more questions of, are you sure? Or are you sure you're not overreacting? Or just any of those doubtful statements that's going to make them feel like they're making some sort of a mistake.
Hmm.
The most important thing you can do is support them in whatever they want to do. Because
Hmm.
most of these relationships, the whole point is that the abuser is seeking control, so the victim doesn't have any control. So if you try to step in and just run everything for them and control how they escape, you're really just putting them in more of a victimization kind of spot.
Hmm.
So what is best is to really take the judgment out of it. Don't even ask questions about, are you sure about this? Are you sure about that? It should be, are you safe? And how do we get you safe? And what do you want to do? And really focus on whatever it is that they want to do. Don't push them towards making a report. Don't push them
Hmm.
towards a counselor until they're ready. And that doesn't mean don't suggest it. Like, hey, do you think you want to talk to someone? Do you think this is your best option? But if they say no, not now, or no, whatever,
Hmm.
um, then you need to just support them in that decision, because really what they need right then is just unfathomable support,
Hmm.
because they have already made the most difficult step, and now they need a steady platform to help to stand on, and you need to be that platform for them.
Mm, that's yeah, yeah. Nuggets of wisdom, folks. Just just be there for people. That's big. That's very big. Especially if you're a guy too, and you don't know how to even help like another female. Just really just be there, and then figure out ways that you can like sort of like be that avenue for them too, because at the end of the day, we all want someone to be there for us, especially if you're going through some like really, really hard times too. And even if you don't know what to do, um, still, still be able to be like, okay, like, I don't know what to do, I'm going to figure it out,
And
figure
that's
out what the
okay to
best
say too.
way.
I don't think anyone would be offended if you tell them, I don't know how to help you, but I will do whatever you need.
Hmm.
I think that's a perfectly acceptable thing to say to someone. And it still shows that you are supportive and that you want to do whatever, you're just not sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that is better than trying to force what you think is the best option
Hmm.
onto someone.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, yeah, definitely should use better word, but
No, no, you're fine.
yeah, yeah, definitely, and then I know for me too, as like a guy, like I definitely do want to do my best to figure out like how to be there for other people, whether you are like of the opposite sex, whether you are another person of color, or you're from the LGBTQ community, just I'm always trying to think like about other people before me, especially because like I went through like a lot of times like I'm not a victim myself of domestic violence or sexual assault or anything, but I know friends who have been through that or been through a lot, and so for me, it definitely is important just to also like recognize like who I am and like where I'm at, and sort of like this day and age is like, okay, I'm a guy in America, and more specifically like a young black guy in America. But I know like where my position at. I at least have some power of measurable change that I can. But also like the power of just being there for people and being like, hey, if you need a shoulder cry on, like cry on my shoulder, and let's talk this out, and let's figure out what could be like the best, and be respectful too of like the person too, and understanding that it's a journey for a lot of people. Um,
And it's a
and
journey they don't want to go on alone, and they don't want to feel
mhm,
like they're alone. So
mhm,
as long as you're letting them know that you're there for them, I think that that is the first step, because
mhm.
they just want to feel like somebody has their back, because it's a vulnerable time.
Yeah, especially in this day and age of COVID, where we feel a lot more isolated, even though we are starting to slowly come back. But Delta variant permitting, it could be, it could be different. You never know of how these things turn out. But still, it's a very eye-opening thing just to see how much we need that social interaction. But most importantly, that support system, that's with the community, and family that can be there for us without any sort of judgment whatsoever, and just nothing but just pure love, and just like, hey, I want to do my best to help you out, like tell me how I can do that, so that way I can. And I think like that's the vision for anyone and everyone, and think it's definitely important. And with that and that so with that said, after your initial talk with your male coworker, what was then like the journey like for you after that point of talking about the safe plan and talking about like how to like deal with this situation, and just sort of explain that and go through that, just so people can understand, just what's that like, this having to talk with a police officer who's trained in those sort of situations.
So it was a long process for me. And again, it was embarrassing because I was living in fear of this man coming back. Everything that I did was based on, was I going to run into him at the store? Was I going to run into him on the street? Was he going to show up at my house? What was I going to do? Was I going to move so that he wouldn't know where I was? Like, there were all these decisions that needed to be made, and it felt like they all needed to be made right away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was very overwhelming at first. And the very first thing was getting to a safe place. And so several friends of mine worked together to find a place where he wouldn't know where I was. I switched cars with a friend for a little while so that I was driving a different car, so that um, I, because it sounds like paranoia, but when you're
Mm-hmm.
in this situation, it's dangerous. And when
Mm-hmm.
you're making that big step of leaving, that's the most dangerous time. And
Mm-hmm.
so you want to say that you're not doing things because of him or because
Mm-hmm.
of your abuser, but you really are, because every single step that you take is in order to make sure you're as safe as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
in doing that, you're basically letting the person still run your life. So for for me, it was about 2 weeks where I worked out how I was going to get him out of the house, and like, all of that kind of stuff, where I
Mm-hmm.
stayed somewhere else and didn't feel safe. And then um, once that kind of official process of breaking, actually
Mm-hmm.
breaking the ties was done, it was a whole new world of, now I don't feel safe because I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was new at that point. And so, I changed the locks on my house, and I decided I didn't want to move because this was my home, and I didn't want to have
Mm-hmm.
to run away. And so I had to balance a lot of things, because running away to me felt like giving in, but staying felt scary. And so there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of decisions that you just had to make one and go with it. Um, and so my friends, luckily, were very supportive. And so at first, I had friends that would stay over while I was kind of getting used to my house being
Mm-hmm.
mine again and things like that. and I got a dog, which was very
Oh.
therapeutic and the best thing the best thing
Mhm.
I ever did. But again, that was a personal decision that I made. And so it was just little things that I did for me that
Mhm.
helped. And then there came a point about a year in where I finally had to say, okay, I need to let go of some of these things that I'm doing because of him. So
Mhm.
there was like, I was taking a certain route to work to avoid his work and avoid coming, basically just driving past him kind of thing. And so it was like, okay, I need to stop doing that, because why am I going out of my way to avoid driving past his car and things like that? Like, I had to make conscious decisions to put myself back in a regular world.
Mhm.
And some of those things were really hard and it took a long time. And
Mhm.
so now we're talking, it's been 6 years. And for the most part, I feel like I live my life normally and that I don't think about it other than when I'm trying to advocate and telling the story this way. And
Mhm.
it's not the same anymore. Like before, I was really uncomfortable telling the story. And now
Mhm.
I realize that the story has more power for me than it does for him, kind of
Mhm.
thing. Um, but there's still those dark moments where, you're having a bad day or something, everything seems like it's going wrong or whatever the case
Mhm.
may be. And when that little voice starts talking in the back of my head and saying, like, you can't do this or whatever it is, that
Mhm.
voice still sounds like him, even 6 years later.
Mhm.
That voice that's telling me I'm not good enough, it will always maybe have his sarcastic, nasty tone to it, kind of thing. And
Mhm.
that's hard, but at the same time, it made me who I am. And
Mhm.
I grew a lot from it. And I've come to this position where I can spread this message and I can talk about it. And, you know, they said, you have to walk through hell, right? So,
Mhm.
so I've done it. I've already walked through hell. And now if I can save someone else from having to do that, then
Mhm.
maybe that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Uh, so, so that leads into my next question then. So with the book, tell us a little bit more about the book, and sort of where you like created, where you like started writing and stuff like that too. Because I imagine it was probably like a very cathartic experience to just being able to just write about your experience, but I can only imagine it was probably hard just to like sort of like dredge up a lot of those like feelings and those memories too. Especially being able to just talk about it and write about it in a book. So explain a little bit more about that, and what that was like too, having to like deal with like sort of like a lot of those feelings from like way back when.
So I picked the young adult genre specifically because I wanted to write to my teenage self.
Mhm.
Because I truly believe that if someone had told me back when I was maybe not 11, but maybe 14 or 15, what a toxic relationship looked like and what the red
Mhm.
flags were, maybe things would have been different. Maybe I would have recognized them. Maybe I would have put some things together that I didn't put together until I was 28 rather than
Mhm.
have to go that far. So I decided to write to that audience, and it is a fiction book. It's not based on my life in the sense
Mhm.
that I'm not the main character. The main character, doesn't resemble me, and
Mhm.
the male figure in this is nothing like um my significant other at the time. Like
Yeah.
it's fiction in that sense, but
Mhm.
all of the emotions are 100% realistic, and they are
Mhm.
all true, and it's real things that teens deal with when they're in toxic relationships.
Mhm.
There's um it deals with sexual assault, it deals with sexual abuse, like it deals with those things that are happening every day in high schools, but
Mhm.
it deals with it so that maybe it's saves someone from dealing with that in high school.
Mm,
And it was it was cathartic for me to write because it did feel like I was doing good. It felt like, if this reaches one person, if it only reaches one person and it makes
mhm,
it so that they're not a victim, then like that, everything was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it was hard. It was hard to write, and it was hard to read it over and over and over as I edited and as I changed things around and whatnot, and
Mm-hmm.
to know that not only did this happen to me, but this is happening. And
Mm-hmm.
there are people right now who are having those feelings and having that struggle. And, that's emotional
Mm-hmm.
in of itself. So it was both a really great experience to feel like I was putting something out there that might help someone, but it was also really hard, mostly because of the fact that it has to be out there. The
Mm-hmm.
very fact that we need it so badly is hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and definitely doing this podcast. It was definitely one of those like, yeah, I want to give like like real victims and allies like a voice to be able to share their stories such as you have, and being able to also have a space where there's like no judgment. It's just just being able to share your story, because I will honestly believe too, and like your story can help inspire someone to share their story, and be able to be like, oh, okay, I am really like not alone, and actually it's like, yeah, like it's not us just saying like you're not alone, like you are not alone. Especially because like you said, like this is something that is still going on, and it's still something that still needs to be talked about. And so being able to just do this too, and being able to put it up in like Spotify and YouTube and stuff, and being able to be like, okay, like even if I can be, even if I'm dead, knock on wood that I don't die, nearly dead. But yeah, like even if I die, what I like was able to post and do, that will stay up forever. Especially if it could help just one person, and help make things a little bit better. Not it won't be better all the way, but just a little bit more better. And so with that, how when you launched the book, how was like the reception? Did you get like immediate traction afterward, or no, or was it like a building up to that eventuality of like, oh, okay, like it's cool. So how received was your book when it first like came out?
So I launched the book right at the end of June, so it's been out about 2 months now, and the reception that I've gotten from it is amazing. I have heard really great things about how so many people wish that this had been available when they were younger, and that
Mm-hmm.
they're sharing it with their children and things like that. I will admit for sure I'm a writer and not a marketer. So I am doing everything I can to try to get this book out as widely as possible, which is kind of how I ended up chatting with you and
Mm-hmm.
various people like that, is just trying to reach audiences that might benefit from hearing my
Mm-hmm.
story or from reading my book. And the reception has been great. I just don't know how to get it to as many people as
Yeah.
possible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I have, I've been blessed to get really great reviews on it so far, and I want it to reach anyone that it could help.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's hard.
Yeah, it is, especially when there's so many eyeballs and so many different places at once. You're like, oh fuck. Like I'm playing catch up. This doesn't this is not right. This is unnatural. I need a break. I need a break. um, but what's the name of your book? Because I believe I also didn't ask, and this is for like those that would be interested in wanting to check out your book. So listeners and viewers, listen closely to the title of the book if you would like to listen to it and watch it. I mean, read it. Wow, I'm great with words.
The book is called He Loves Me Not. It is available on Amazon and basically anywhere else, including my website, which is just my first and last name. And it's by Nenia Corcoran, and I hope that it reaches more people that might benefit from it.
Awesome, awesome. With that, you said you also are doing like advocacy and stuff too. So have you been, going to like a lot of like speaking engagements then, to like talk to like a wide audience, or how has that been for you, especially with like, COVID and everything and having to deal with like the restrictions and social distancing and stuff?
So things were going a lot better. I have booked with some local schools and things like that to try to get in front of the actual kids that I'm trying to reach.
Mm-hmm,
Um, those things got canceled last year, but hopefully are on for this coming fall.
mm-hmm,
I, right before COVID, had developed a class, a safety class for young women and women, and I developed that to be something that was done in person. And then, of course,
mm-hmm,
COVID happened, so I have spent the last couple of months recording that and getting that
mm-hmm.
prepared to be an online course instead of an in-person course. So that should be launching hopefully by the end of this month. And
Awesome.
just various like educational things wherever I can spread the actual like what is behind domestic violence and sexual assault and all of those definitions, because those are the things that you don't know
Mm-hmm,
until you know them. And so if we can teach those early enough that you don't have to learn them firsthand, like
mm-hmm,
that's really an important first step.
mm-hmm.
So I just launched my podcast, which is also called He Loves Me Not. And I do a lot of just educational kind of stuff around domestic violence and sexual assault.
Awesome, awesome. You hear that, folks? She also has a podcast, so don't go just listen to my podcast. Listen to hers too, as well. You might get some very valuable insight from her too. And she's doing pretty awesome, amazing things. So go support, like her stuff. Support, support, support. Um, yeah, this is awesome. Just hearing you do all these like awesome things too, and like that, and using like the platform that you have to, be a voice for like so many like young women and women, and just being able to put yourself out there, and I think is very admirable. Yes, admirable. Okay, there we go. Yes, admirable. And yeah, and you are a badass. Like you are a badass.
Well, thank you very much. And I also admire what you're doing, and I think that this is a great space for telling stories and for getting that word out, because the only way that we can learn from each other is if we talk about it. And if we are
Hmm.
all keeping silent and afraid to talk about things, then things are just going to keep repeating themselves and keep happening. So I think
Hmm.
it's great that you've created this space where people can share like this.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you. I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best. So it's just one of those things where each as I get to more doing this, hopefully like the improvement and quality of this, of this like go is like bigger than me. Like I don't I don't real like I don't even really like. Okay, yes, I care about getting paid. Side note, I also made a Patreon. So for this podcast, so just for $3 a month, you can help me not only pay the bills but also make this like podcast a little bit better and stuff too. So that's my call to action of today. But no money, like money aside, if there was no money involved, stuff like I just am happy to just even like impact the way that I can, and be able to like use my superpowers for good, and be able to create a space, and especially seeing how many spaces aren't created for these sort of things, and like being like, okay, I want to be able to create this space for this community of people, just so that way, again, they, get that sense of community, but also definitely see like, they're not alone and they could help and lean on, to one another too, because just the issues of sexual assault, domestic violence, whatever you can whatever you label it as is is a systemic issue that has been going on for a long time, and hasn't really things haven't really been done to really change the things within our own communities, our own businesses, or anything like that too. So yeah, like just being able to still talk about this, and talking about this still, like it can sound annoying hearing the same things over again, but repetition is key. So if you hear it again and again and again, it eventually like hits, and you're like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, I have to do this thing, and actually be aware of it. But it's because again, this is still affecting people. This is still affecting everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're young, old, male, female, part of the LGBTQ community, person of color. Like this affects everyone. But it
Yes.
takes everyone to also help make the changes possible too, because we also have that power too. But life happens. We can't do a lot of things too, because life happens where we have to worry about how to pay for rent within the next month, or how we can find like more money, or having health concerns or anything like that. Um, it's 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 knowing that, like, at the end of the day, like, there are people out there that are trying and that are doing their best to help, and that there are people that also need help too. So it's figuring out what you yourself can do, and like the areas that you're at too, and realizing too, like, at the end of the day, like, if as long as you're trying, like, that's totally fine. Like, we're human. We're not perfect animals. We are we're gonna fluff up. We're gonna make mistakes. But at the end of the day, as long as you're trying to do your best, like, compared to yesterday, then you're already winning. And then you're also already even more of a winner too if you're a decent fucking human being too.
Exactly. Don't be a shitty person.
Yes, don't be a shitty person. Costs $0 to be a decent person. Decent person.
Exactly.
But with that said, before logging off, do you have any last comments to our listeners and viewers, on anything? With whether you have like a new book, another speaking engagement, or even just advice in general, and just for everyone that's listening and viewing this podcast.
I would just say don't stop talking. Don't hide behind the silence. Just we can't change anything if we're hiding. So speak out when you see an issue, and the more we talk about them, the better chance we have at getting those things changed.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And that right there, folks, is great, great, great advice to hear from Nenia Corcoran. Did I say your name right? Okay,
You did.
yes, yes, yes. Cool, cool. Because I will feel ultimately bad if I fuck up the meaning your name. I'm like, oh shit. But all right, guys, thank you guys for tuning in and viewing this. You can catch this podcast on the YouTube channel at the Tell Your Story podcast. It's also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you can listen and view podcasting. Because we all love listening to podcasts. I mean, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan became big, and we all love listening to that crazy bastard. But yeah, so definitely check out the podcast, especially the first 3 episodes, and also follow the Facebook page too. So if you're watching this on YouTube, there'll probably be a link in the description below for that Facebook page. And then if you're listening to this on Spotify, you can search it up. You can just search it up on Facebook or search it up on YouTube. We have phones. We have Google search. We can easily search this up in a matter of like a minute. It'll be, you got this. You got this. You can just do it just sitting at home, just not typing. But that will be it for now. So see you later.